All right, so I'm going to be talking about hand-drawn animation of moving around, walking, running, jumping. Um, anyway, first thing I want to say about animations is not just about motion, because you can have motion that is unconvincing, that doesn't look very good, doesn't look realistic. And to me, the definition of realistic motion or good animation would be animation in which you feel that there's a sense of exertion. You feel like you're lifting things, that you're having to overcome momentum, that there's a sense of muscular exertion, that there's forces being exerted to push things around. And so anyway, here let me just clear what I've got going on here, and let's start with just taking that first step. So for me, the most important parts are the feet and the head. And well, in this particular case, all right. And the reason for that is that the head is kind of, well, I've heard of the saying where a walk is this controlled fall or a controlled topple. So something's going to be toppling over or falling over. I'm going to simulate that. I'm not just going to. Here we are. I'm just setting up my circle guideline right now. Okay, so there we go. So if that's right there at the ankle, that's the pivot point. That's the pivot point right there. And I've set up that arc. So I'm going to have them topple forward first of all. So I've got no frames. Okay, so there's my first frame. This is my second frame. And yes, I know there's onion skin, but I'm going to resist turning that thing on. Sometimes I use onion skin. Sometimes I like to, not have it on. In this case, I prefer to flip the animation to see how something's going to move as an onion skin. And here's the other thing, is that if you're working without an onion skin, and there's a reason why I'm showing you, not the screen capture, but I'm showing you from, a camera, is because you're going to see how I'm doing this motion right now. All right, I'm moving my hand around and around and around this little circular motion. Right, that is my way of dealing with the lack of an onion skin. Right, and this is good in that you see when I flip it back and forth, I can see how this thing is moving. Right, with an onion skin, everything is static, nothing's moving. So in this case, I'm just gonna let's keep animating this topple. It's not even a walk, and okay, so I'm flipping this back and forth, and there, I'm gonna. Actually, I'm not even, well, I could just kind of draw a circle there, but I'm just going to, let's take that and flatten it out. Right, so I'm going to have him just fall straight on his face. Let's draw some impact markings. Okay, there we go. And of course, now I'm going to go into that one in between. All right. Wham. Now, you can see here that this is all pretty much linearly interpolated. There's no tweening going on. There's no smoothing. So I'm going to throw in an in between. So this is before, that's after, right? So here, let me just close some of these extra things because I don't need them. All right, so this is there, before, after, before, after. So once again, that head's looking a little bit big. Okay, now the reason why I put in that tweening, right, is that it gives you a sense of acceleration. Things getting faster and faster. Sense of acceleration is very important because because right now the only forces that are acting on this person are gravity, which is pulling him downwards, and maybe the flexion of his ankles, right? So you flex your ankles, you pull your toes upwards, and the head is already balanced, that way. So the head doesn't suddenly, go from 0 to 60. It takes time to accelerate. It takes time for gravity to work its magic and gradually add its velocity to his velocity. The velocity of that force is going to add to his momentum. Bang. Okay, so we have this toppling motion, and I could just go in here and keep on adding frames and in betweening it until it all smooths out, but that's going to take a while, and that is more about in betweening than it is about simulating motion. So bang, we know how to make a guy fall straight forward on his face. Well, in this case, let's make it so that, you know, he doesn't completely fall on his face, right? We need to make it so he takes that first step. So 1, 2, maybe what I'll do is I'll throw in one more in between here. Whoops. Right, so I'm flipping. All right, that looks. And then I gotta get his foot back in there. This is probably gonna be a walk with a really, really large stride, but let's just do it. There. So there, by putting his other foot out here to catch himself, we have now altered his fate, right? If it wasn't for that foot there, his fate would be to just go wham, right? So the difference is that now we've altered his fate by putting that foot out. And now when I go backwards, right, I can flip backwards. And you can kind of imagine right? There's that foot coming out. And then it's just a matter of in-betweening that foot so that we have a nicer motion. Okay, so this is the fate that has been averted. So I'm going to get rid of those frames. Right? And now look at it, if you look at the path at which his head's moving, right? It's an arc that went this way. And when his foot reaches that point, you know, his head going to bounce upwards, right? Because this is now the new linkage. This is the weight. Now this has become the weight-bearing foot. So what's going to happen is this is eventually going to become like that, right? So you have to understand how these linkages work. I'm going to do that. I'm going to throw in between right here. In fact, I think I've shot him a little too high up, right? But this is the reason why you flip the animation, is that you flip the animation so you can tell when things are off. Things don't feel right. And now we have this other foot here, and there's a knee joint there, so we have the passing position. And I look at this foot here, and looking at how it peels off. So at this point, I don't really care about drawing the arms. All I care about really is just the head, the feet, wherever the ground is. And simulating this whole. So I'm going to track the position of this foot. It goes up and there. Then it's there. Right? You want to get that feeling of catching. He's always catching himself. He's always averting his fate of smashing headfirst into the ground. So all this comes down to is just more in-betweens. So if I want to have another in-between, then I'll just throw a frame in there. So if you're wondering what program I'm using, it's TVP Animation Pro. If you ask in the comments, you deserve to die. Die! But undoubtedly someone's going to ask, as they always do. Yeah, that feels right. So that's the thing. You have to flip to see how the motion feels. If you're sitting there onion skinning the thing, you know, you don't get a sense of motion through the onion skinning. Or what do you call it? Light table is the other term for it. Yeah, and if you're not sensing where that foot should go, then just, you know, flip it again. because it's the act of flipping it and seeing, you know, how it moves that you kind of can figure out where that next piece is going to go, where that missing part that you're going to draw is going to go. All right, I'm even feeling that this head is still a little bit stretched out. Right, but that's you have to feel this stuff. In fact, I think in this case, let's get that foot back in there. Right, because that foot's going to help me figure out. In fact, maybe I want him to come to a stop. So, coming to a stop, maybe what I'll do is I'll have this foot. You see, it's all right now. It's like my attention is shifted from the head to the feet. So this other foot. There. Okay, now I need the in-between here. Make him come to a stop. All right, so I'm dealing with the transition of him turning. And you'll notice that I'm not trying to draw complete images. That's what illustration's about. This is animation. Okay. And the rest is just in-betweening, having to throw in additional frames to bridge that gap. So there's a big gap here. So if it feels like there's a big gap, then you just throw another piece of paper in there, and then you gotta work out the spacing. And you'll notice that I'm kind of tentative sometimes, right? So I draw, you know, a light stroke in there to see if that looks correct. If it does, then I reinforce it. There. And maybe in this case, he doesn't come to an immediate stop. I want to have him overshoot just a little bit because that big fat head of his. Let's throw a frame in here. So this is the in-between now. So I'm going to push that head. No, I want to push a little bit further. So there's a bit of a little too far, right? So if it's going too far all the time, then draw it anyways, right? It's too far, but you can just draw it a little bit more distinctly there. I don't want this leg straightening out so much. There we go. Okay, so there. I think maybe 15 minutes is kind of long enough for just the basic walk. We'll see how this does. If I get enough, I don't know. If I get enough feedback on this one, enough people watch it, then I'll do another one. I'll do one dealing with jumps and staggers.